It takes time to sort through the chaos and begin to see what is truly there. George Will at last did exactly that and explained it in his column of May 3rd when he wrote of President Trump, quote, "The dangerous thing is that he does not know what it is to know something." We humans are profoundly uncomfortable with not knowing. We make up stories in a nanosecond to fill voids in our understandings, and you'll find yourself doing it many times a day if you know what to look for. For example, you're driving down the highway when the car in the next lane suddenly swerves into your lane, cutting you off. There's a good chance you'll be yelling something like, "Idiot!" just as though you actually know something about the other driver's mental limitations. But it's just your fantasy. Or, your high school age kid has a curfew of midnight and it's 1:15 a.m. She's not home and there's been no phone call. Do you think, gosh, I'll bet she's having a great time at the party? Not a chance. You're reaching for your phone and wondering where to call first, the police or the hospital. Either way, you've made up a story. We all make up stories because we're more comfortable with our fictions than with not knowing. And so it is with trying to understand Donald Trump's behavior. Dozens of mental health professionals have weighed in, finding him wanting of certain higher brain functions and social skills. We've called Trump many names in an effort to explain what drives his detached from reality, self-serving, cruel, and sometimes questionably legal behavior, but George Will seems to have identified something that leans against the heart of the matter. Trump really doesn't know what it is to know something. He just makes stuff up. Be clear that what drives Trump's disability is far less important than limiting him, so that in his inability to actually know something, he doesn't permanently damage what's important. Which brings us to Trump's obvious attempts to obstruct justice. He fired U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara of the Southern District of New York as he was investigating possible wrongdoing by Trump's HHS Secretary Tom Price, as well as Trump's primary flag waver, Fox News. Further, Bharara had jurisdiction over Trump Tower in New York. He finagled Representative Devin Nunes, Republican of political suicide, into making a fool of himself and in the process neutering the House Intelligence Committee's efforts to investigate Trump's possible conspiracy with the Russians to turn the presidential election his way. He fired Sally Yates, acting Attorney General, when she both refused to defend Trump's clearly unconstitutional Muslim ban, and she warned Trump of Mike Flynn setting himself up for blackmail by the Russians. That would imply a link to Trump. Clearly, Yates had to go. And now, just as James Comey had gone to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, asking for additional resources for the expanding investigation into Trump's possible conspiracy with the Russians, Trump fired him, giving a clumsy and implausible justification for the sacking. There's a link to it in the written blog. Furthermore, don't forget Trump's continuing attack on the Fourth Estate, the people of the press, who are the watchdogs to keep government accountable. He viciously and baselessly attacks the press at every opportunity in order to undermine your confidence in them when they report negative things about him. Are you seeing a pattern here? Donald Trump neutralizes anyone who starts to get close to the truth about him. That ought to shiver your timbers. It surely shivers those of our democracy. As for the challenges of reporting on Trump, have a look at what Russian reporter Alexei Kovalev had to say about covering Trump's bromance idol Putin and see if anything sounds familiar. This is what it's like covering lying, manipulative autocrats. Not knowing causes us to make up stories to fill in the blanks, and it's all too easy to focus on doing that. But making up stories is insufficient if we're to have a democracy. We need an independent investigation of Trump and his cronies now. Go to Representative Jerry Nadler's page for MoveOn.org, there's a link in the blog, and sign the petition calling for exactly that. Here's why. Last week, I attended a meeting hosted by Representative Brad Schneider, Democrat of Illinois, focusing on gun violence in the U.S. There I asked a question about what it will take to get a gun safety bill onto the floor of the House and Senate for an up or down vote so we can hold our legislators accountable. He said it would take two things. First, it will take new leadership. That makes sense since it's the leader of each chamber of Congress who decides what bills will come to the floor. Second, he said it will take the power of the people. We must make our voices heard. That happens when millions of us speak up. Our power is in our numbers, and it's why you're going to sign Jerry Nadler's petition. Go ahead, do it now. Then call your senators and representatives and tell them to demand an independent prosecutor. Not knowing isn't an option because you know. Finally, in an interview with Lester Holt on May 11th, President Trump characterized James Comey as a showboat and a grandstander. Is it possible that Trump fired Comey in part because he was getting too much attention and Trump wants it all for himself? No, that isn't snark, and I'm not kidding. I'm wondering if that's part of the motivation for firing Comey for this attention-craving president. I'm Jack Alshuler.